This is one of the main reasons that early Jews didn't take warmly to the followers of Jesus and their message. And these ideas were later compiled and canonized by Christians into what is known today as the New Testament. So I think this is enough basic info to expose the deception. Now, I'm going to be painting with a broad brush when describing Christianity, even though I know there are hundreds of Christian denominations all claiming that stake for truth. If anything, this alone should be enough reason to write them off as confused imposters. However, what I have to say will be applicable to Protestants, Catholics, Messianics, and Nazarene Christians. So, as I said earlier, Christians accept the New Testament along with what they call the Old Testament as divinely inspired works. But the main problem that many Christians have is that they erroneously view the Old Testament with New Testament glasses instead of the other way around. Why the other way around? Well, the Old Testament has to validate the New. Why? Because it is the New Testament that claims to be a fulfillment of the Old, not the other way around. This can be seen how missionaries push forth the book of John as the first book that new Christians should read instead of Genesis or even Exodus. Why? Because ultimately non-Jews did not await a Messiah. But now that they blindly have elected one, don't you think they should at least initially learn about the concept before being able to accept Jesus' supposed free gift of salvation? Well, I guess the church's answer to this would be no, because it is obvious that if any Christian would begin his studies in Genesis instead of John or Matthew, he would also conclude that the same God who inspired the old could not have inspired the new. And even if you take their scripture, did Jesus or Paul ever authorize the creation of a New Testament? Do you think that when Paul was writing a letter to the churches, he would have thought that his letters would be eternally canonized on the same level as the Torah and the prophets? Even when it states in Timothy that all scripture is God-breathed, we have to put that statement in the timeline which it was said. Anyone at that time who would have heard the term scripture mentioned would have automatically known that they were referring to the Jewish scriptures and not the New Testament. How do we know this? Well, because the New Testament didn't exist yet. Have I lost you? Are you still with me, friends? Well, let me give you more. And I'm surprised if Christians even know who canonized the New Testament as we know it today. Friends, let me give you the answer. It was the Roman Catholic Church in 375 CE that had the honor of deciding what books were going to be included in the final canon, and they also decided the many books that were left out because it didn't fit the church's agenda. The Catholic Church, my friends, this is the same Catholic Church that Christians today claim do not speak for them. The same church that Pope John Paul II apologized for the atrocities it had committed. Friends, this is the same church that massacred Protestants and also had the luxury and privilege to lay down doctrines that are still believed by the church today. And in that sense, yes, the New Testament is new. New in terms of foreign and detached from its predecessor. Friends, no religion claiming to be an extension of Judaism can be authenticated when the central figure is a Messiah and not God. Actually, the proper understanding of Scripture should have taught you that the Messiah and Yemos HaMashiach, or the Messianic age, are a privilege and not a right. We even see that Klal Yisrael was demanding a king from Shmuel HaNavi. And what was his response? He said, "You don't need a king. God will be your king." Now, what was the Navi trying to say here? He wasn't stating that Klal Yisrael shouldn't hope for a Messiah, but he was against forcibly trying to initiate a messianic age before the world was ready for it. So, the Jewish religion has always revolved around the idea that the author of our instructions is the central figure and not some created being. And that our Creator is first and foremost altruistic in nature, and his sole purpose of revealing his will to humanity was for the benefit of his creation. Now, let's talk about authenticity. So, I mentioned before that Christianity claims to be the fulfillment of Jewish scripture. So you'd figure that there would be traces of Jewishness within it. However, there is nothing authentically Jewish within the Christianity of today. My friends, synagogues have gone back to at least the Second Temple. Heck, Jesus even preached in them. So you would figure that the Christians' meeting place, the church, would resemble a synagogue at least a bit. And if you're of Catholic background, you must ask yourself, Where do nuns and celibate priests come from? Where do venerated statues scattered all over the place originate from? Confessionals, the Eucharist, Hail Marys. Where does any of this appear in Jewish scripture that supposedly Christianity fulfilled? Or if you're a Protestant, the idea of deacons, bishops, and pastors, where do they come from? Where does Sunday worship come from? Crosses, post-temple tithe collections, the word church, the eating of non-kosher food, the speaking in tongues, the being drunk in the spirit, knocking others down in the spirit, original sin, a second coming, a rapture, a trinity, not circumcising your children, a virgin birth, and God becoming a man, chas v'shalom. Where does that originate from? Now, you're obviously free to do whatever you want. However, when you claim that your religion is a fulfillment and extension of an older one, you must play by the rules to at least make it seem that it was inspired by the same author. Now, regarding Messianic Christians or Nazarenes who have attempted to strip off many of Christianity's pagan layers so that something that at least looks Jewish remains, they are still left with the erroneous New Testament to contend with, full of its pagan imagery and wacky Pauline doctrines. To this they answer, Yeshua came to the Jews and Paul was sent to the Gentiles. So every time Paul says something contradictory to Judaism, he is speaking to Goyim. Because when non-Jews break Jewish law, they are not held liable. However, to that I would have to respond with the same argument. Wouldn't non-Jews also be excluded from benefiting from a Jewish sacrifice performed on their behalf? Because again, they're non-Jews. So how could Jesus' death atone for their sins? Even eating the Paschal lamb, which later became the Eucharist in Christianity, again, it wouldn't be permitted to be eaten by an uncircumcised non-Jew. Look, I understand that we're not always responsible for the belief system we happen to be in. Maybe you were raised in the church, or in your time of turmoil, you only found Christianity to strengthen you. But, my friends, it's time to evaluate your beliefs and consider that perhaps you made a mistake. Friends, I'm not going to lie to you. I believe that Christianity is not an idolatrous religion for non-Jews to embrace. The Meiri and even the Ramah holds like this. But if you're interested in something more authentic and true, I want you to consider Judaism and regard your past Christian life as a stepping stone to truth. You're probably wondering why I said that Christianity is not idolatrous for non-Jews to embrace, while at the same time it is considered idolatry for a Jew to embrace. Well, Judaism acknowledges that non-Jews came to the God of Israel through Yashka, but the idea that a Jew should come into something impure or erroneous from the God of Israel is unacceptable. Friends, if you're interested in converting to Judaism, I want you to go to your local Orthodox synagogue and tell the rabbi, I want to be Jewish. He may test your sincerity, but persevere, and one day you will be Jewish. For more information on converting to Judaism or Judaism in general, please visit bejewish.org. There you will find a lot of videos that will help you on your journey. Thank you.